I think so. Yep, I do.
What about regional banks or super regional banks versus, the big four? Is there a different standard or a different level of investment? Or basically what I'm trying to get to is not so much, the pure dollar investment, which obviously would grow with scale, but is there any benefit to scale, or is that detrimental actually?
I mean, I think in general, the regional banks are less on the radar for sure of the regulators. So that means there's higher risk for the bigger banks. It's just the way it works is the bigger the bank and the bigger the profile. Oftentimes, I mean, there has to be something there. Like our government regulator is not going to find someone for no reason. But a lot of these banks have they all have the same exact issues. There's no bank that has none of these issues. It's just how they mitigate them and how do they represent that to the regulators. So the goal for the regulators is if you fall in the category of you've responded to these inquiries and you have a problem, we want to find the biggest, highest profile bank. They do that for a strategic reason, because then it sets a standard and it sets a bright line for everyone else that this is the line you have to reach to be minimally viably compliant, because we've now sanctioned, say, JP Morgan for the X, Y, and Z, and if you don't meet that standard, we're gonna fine you too. Usually on a lesser scale if you are a smaller bank or a smaller incident, but they like to create a standard, bright line by the biggest bank possible with the deepest pockets to do that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
They're not going to go. In other words, if everyone has the same problem, they're not going to go after some regional bank to make an example of them, because they don't have the resources to be sanctioned, and they also no one cares about them.
Yeah, so they're going to go after Citibank or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. In terms of just sheer investment in this space, do you have a sense what percentage of the technology budget of banks goes to compliance, goes to cybersecurity, and maybe those are two separate buckets?
Yeah, I don't have a set number for you. I do know it's all I can tell you is it's increasing. You can there's definitely research that shows that for example, this year I know for a fact that organizations are increasing their budgets. I don't have a percentage for you of what percentage of the overall budget that is. I think that also depends on the organization, if they've been fined recently, perhaps. But I don't know off the top of my head, X percentage of their overall budget typically goes to cybersecurity, for example. It's clear though that it's increasing.
Mm-hmm. In terms of, so we talked about data. Is the use of machine learning in any way increase the risk? Or is that just, application on top of the data that you don't really care about from a compliance perspective?
I would say no. It has not increased the risk. It's only helped. And I'll tell you why. Because these organizations are risk averse and they're slow to move. They do only what they need to do. And so machine learning is definitely part of the equation at this point. I know for a fact that all of the big banks use predictive coding and machine learning to do document review for their attorneys. They didn't do that for a long time until they felt as though it was not a risk-averse decision to make. And that's because there's now legal precedent that says that they can do it. And that it's actually more accurate than not using it. And they can point to that to a regulator or anyone else. I know the regulators actually do it too. They use machine learning for that same thing. So at this point, unless you're using machine learning and artificial intelligence or predictive coding in a way that is outside the bounds of what is typically used, organizations are not worried about it being a problem in that way.
Okay.
And it's also from a monetization aspect too. They're using it